Alright everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you everyone for coming to tonight's Tech and Asia Meetup event. This is our first meetup that we've ever had in Hong Kong. Just to tell you a little about what we do, in case you aren't familiar with Tech and Asia, we are a tech blog, tech media organization, and we try and cover startups and consumer technology in Asia, in English, for an international English-speaking audience. And we try and cover startups, consumer tech from a sort of granular, local perspective, and providing some of these local insights to an international English-speaking audience that might not be able to have access to those insights through other media organizations. With these meetups, we usually hold about one every 8 weeks all over Asia. How's the volume? Thumbs up? Good? Okay. So we usually hold meetups maybe once every 8 weeks all over Asia. We've had them in Bangkok, we've had them in Singapore, we've had them in Jakarta, and so this is our first ever in Hong Kong, so we're really excited. For this event, we brought along two really talented entrepreneurs. We brought along, she's not shaking his head. We brought along Anthony Tan from GrabTaxi, who you're probably all familiar with, which is a very popular taxi hailing app that was born in Malaysia and is now expanded to Singapore and the Philippines and Thailand, correct?
5 countries.
5 countries, okay.
Well, 6 countries, 15 cities.
6 countries, 15 cities, okay, great. And we also have Stephen Jagger, founder of PayrollHero, which is a payroll software as a service. Is that an accurate description? SaaS PayrollHero? Or, yeah, sure. Kind of. Payroll tracking software from Canada, and founded his startup in the Philippines. So our theme tonight is scoring in Southeast Asia. Our goal is to just get a better understanding of the startup ecosystem in Southeast Asia, what it means to kind of grow a startup, global-facing startup in Southeast Asia, and what expansion means when you do once you've already built your startup in your home market. I think for our structure tonight, what we're going to try and do is, I think we're going to kind of do a part one. We're going to put the spotlight on Stephen, and then Anthony, and then Anthony's going to chime in when appropriate, and then we're going to shift the spotlight towards Anthony, and then Stephen's going to chime in when necessary, and then at the end we'll kind of tie everything all together. So before we get started, I gave really brief intros, but I'd just like to hear from both of you. You guys could just give your elevator pitch of who you are and what your startup is all about. And we'll start with you, Anthony.
Works. There you go. Hi guys. So just 2 years ago, I was sitting there and staring at the weird guy up front. Now I'm the weird guy. So I'm really honored to be here. Just feel free to bounce off ideas, bounce off questions. We didn't hit it right in the beginning. And feel free to poke our model because we're far from perfect. But what we did was we took what worked in the States and we said, hey, what if we made it really cheap? We made it super efficient and we made it super safe, addressing real problems. So in Southeast Asia, for many of you who have been or visited before, you'll know that safety for women, especially in taxis, was a big problem. So we said, okay, that's a real problem. We said, let's address that. The second was drivers. Drivers were just earning minimum wage at best. So we said, hey, how do you create a system to make sure drivers earn a lot more money? So we came up with, well, in Malaysia it's called My Taxi, MYTEKSI. Yes, we can spell. It's the way Malaysians spell taxi or in Malay, and then GrabTaxi all across Southeast Asia. So it's Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia.
Okay. Yeah, applause. Okay, Stephen, why don't you introduce yourself and your startup?
Sure, my name is Steve Jagger. The company's called PayrollHero. Myself and my business partner Mike Stevenson are Canadians. We started PayrollHero kind of out of our own need. We set up a BPO in the Philippines in 2008. couldn't find a payroll product that worked or that we liked or that was web-based. We wanted to be able to run payroll, manage time, attendance, and scheduling from wherever we were. And so we ended up building a product for ourselves. And long story short, other people wanted to use it, and it became a business in itself. So that's kind of how we ended up doing what we're doing here.
Okay, Stephen, so you were telling me earlier you described yourself as a white guy from Canada. How did you end up in the Philippines building a payroll-based startup?
So I guess start at the beginning. My business partner, Mike, and I have been business partners for 14 years, and PayrollHero is our fourth company together. And so each one of our businesses, the first one kind of led to the second one. We had a web hosting company in 2000, sold in 2006. That led us to a real estate software company that we just sold last year, but it was a real estate software company. We wanted to outsource our customer service to the Philippines. So we flew to the Philippines to try and find an outsourcing company. 2008, probably everybody remembers, kind of sucked. There was a bit of a financial problem, and so we thought maybe we could take advantage of that time, and instead of finding a company to outsource to, we decided to set up a Philippine Incorporation and get into the outsourcing business and sell leased labor back into the North American market, basically chasing guys like us. So we set up that company, and our first customer was ourselves, was our Canadian real estate software company. And then it was in that outsourcing company, like I mentioned before, that we couldn't find a solution that we wanted or that would work or that did anything that we wanted. So we ended up building it. It was originally for our own internal need, PayrollHero. And we ended up showing it to a few Philippine business owners that they came by our office one day. We showed them this little thing that we had built, what is now PayrollHero, and a couple of them wanted to use it. One of them was the guy that owns Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf Philippines. At the time, he had about 50 stores running payroll in Excel, and he was he had tried 4 different Philippine payroll products. All of the implementations had failed, and he had reverted back to Excel documents. So he was losing his mind. He wanted to use this product, and so it was that conversation that kind of got us going down the path of looking at what else is going on in emerging markets in Southeast Asia. What other payroll products are here? Why aren't the big Western products here? And that's sort of how a couple Canadians ended up in the Philippines with a payroll platform. But yeah, it kind of makes sense if you know the story, but it seems pretty random without that.
Right. Well, it seems like it's a really linear progression from one startup to the other, and you just sort of ended up in the Philippines in a way that was kind of logical. As for PayrollHero, setting it up, building it, establishing a customer base, how do you think, if you imagined a parallel universe where you had to build a startup in Canada, how do you think it would have been different?
Well, we would compete differently. If we were chasing the Canadian, usually you're not really chasing the Canadian market. You're usually chasing the North American market. Canada's it's like Malaysia. It's like 35 million people. It's not a huge market, and so Canada happens to be attached to the U.S. So you're usually looking at both. But if we were there and we were chasing that market, it's a different sale. It's a feature-to-feature sale, pricing sale. Over in Southeast Asia, it's an educational sale. Like, why the cloud? Why software as a service? Why I want to own it and I want to put it in my little server room somewhere is the way a lot of businesses think here. And so it's literally an educational sale. And so it's not impossible. It's just different. We would be selling completely differently if we were selling into the Western market.
How do you overcome some of that resistance, or how do you educate in order to complete the sale?
We do it a few different ways. We educate around the cost of owning that software and the machine in the corner. The Philippines we had a typhoon yesterday, so rolling brownouts. The generators, most of the buildings weren't working. So, like, I went up and down the stairs yesterday to get to the office and back. And most companies, if that's where your payroll software was sitting and you had to run payroll that day, you're kind of offline. So we use examples like that to explain why that's not necessarily the best way to keep your systems and your businesses online. And so we educate through webinars, white papers, email, subscription emails, so people that can understand from an HR point of view. We try and sell into the different personas of every business. right? So selling into the owner of the business, even owners are different. There's 6 or 7 different types of owners that we focus on. And so we sell to each different persona based on who that owner is. Right, there's owners in the Philippines or most of Southeast Asia that's like family-based businesses. So sometimes you're talking to the CEO, she's the CEO, and you get down the line, everything looks great, and you find out like her mom, who retired 20 years, actually still runs the company. And so and that's a certain type of owner you just got to deal with. And then there's other owners that are very hands-on, totally in control of their business. Then there's other owners that are just absentee owners. They own it, but they don't really care. They just hope it makes the dividends and everything works, but they're not hands-on in the business. So each one of these personas we sell to differently. And then we have to deal with the HR professionals, and then we have to deal with the payroll professionals, and we have personas for each of them. Right? Sometimes there's a payroll person that just freaked out. They think they're going to lose their job because of what we're doing, because they just don't get it. They think of it as just like they're out of a job, and so we have to educate them on why that's not the case and why our system just makes their lives easier. And so yeah, we handle each one in a unique way depending on who they are.
What you're talking about right now, it seems like you're describing a learning curve. It seems like you've sort of reached an endpoint to this learning curve. But how much of this experience that you've acquired, how much of that do you think was from your experience starting companies in Canada? And how much do you think, to what extent do you have to start from scratch when you move to the Philippines?
I think most of what we've had to do over here is completely different from what we've done in the past. And we're definitely not at the end of our learning curve. I think we're just at the beginning. Selling over here it's complex. Like we've got cultural problems, currency problems, corruption problems, language problems, talent problems. Like there's ton. Like I'm a 6'5" white guy that speaks English. Like it works okay in the Philippines, but it's not going to work very well in Jakarta. It's not going to work very well in KL. There's other places where we're going to have language issues. Or I see it in the Philippines where I'm talking to the payroll admin, who's some nice, sweet lady who just doesn't want to ask me any questions whatsoever because she'd rather have me leave. Like she's too nervous to ask anything. And if we have like someone from our Philippine team come in, and that payroll person just might be more comfortable speaking in Tagalog, and I can't do that for her. And so instead of her fighting her way in English, she would rather just not say anything, which obviously is not a very effective way to deal with it. So we have these challenges all over the place that I wouldn't have it if I was selling in Vancouver or selling in Miami. It's the same, right? Even though it's 2 different countries, it's the same language, similar culture.
Do you ever see it as a trade-off that you have to fight these new challenges, but that's for an opportunity that might be greater and more exciting than what's in Canada?
Yeah, that's why I go home otherwise. That's why we're here. Right? We're here because we think Southeast Asia emerging markets are amazing. They're huge. They're untapped. Like the cloud computing is becoming very acceptable. Smartphones are becoming widely used. Cost of internet is coming down. Cost of data is coming down. All of these things are happening, I think, at the right time, right? Like literally right now. And so I think it's a huge opportunity. And the way our product works, we sell into businesses that we get paid per employee per month. So if you take a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in LA, it might have 4 staff. That same size Coffee Bean in the Philippines will have 15 because they can afford to. Like they'll have 2 guys opening the door, 4 guys cleaning tables, 2 baristas instead of 1, 4 cashiers instead of 2. Like they're just, the employee counts are much higher. For us, it's fantastic because that's how we get paid. So the opportunities, I think, for us, are actually bigger.
Okay, great. So tell me a little about Incorporation. We were talking about this a little before we started. So your Philippine outsourcing company is incorporated in the Philippines, correct?
Yes.
And then PayrollHero is incorporated in Singapore. Can you elaborate a little more why you made that decision?
So when we first set up, we didn't know what to do, and so we debated on a Delaware corp in the U.S., setting up as a Canadian corp in Vancouver, or looking at Hong Kong or Singapore. We didn't know a lot about the right answers over here. The only thing about like Hong Kong, I don't know. The only thing I just don't know is what's China going to do with Hong Kong? What does 5 years look like with China and Hong Kong? What is 15? I have no idea. I don't know how it's going to work. It just seems an unknown question mark that I just don't know. And so we incorporated in Singapore because we wanted to be a Southeast Asia company. We're focused on Southeast Asia. We wanted to kind of keep our story in that sort of frame, and that's, you know, we chose it. They're both very tax-friendly places. I think if you compare Singapore and Hong Kong, they're very similar overall. But the China thing for me was, we just don't know. It was just a weird question mark, and who knows? It could be not a concern whatsoever at all. You know, I have no idea.
But incorporating the Philippines wasn't an option or wasn't consideration?
We've heard concerns of it's difficult to sell companies out of the Philippines, it's difficult to get investment in the Philippines, and so it's changing fast there. There's lots of good tech startups that are incorporated there, that are being funded there, but for us, we wanted to go a different direction.
Okay. So the product that you guys sell, and I think you conveyed this one up in your summary, is it's software. So in theory, you can reach consumers all over the world, and you do have some customers all over the world. And you're based in Manila, which isn't exactly a place where word of mouth is going to travel easily for the type of business that you're running. Do you ever feel that it's a big challenge to kind of reach customers internationally from your base camp in Manila?
Well, for us, we're focused on Southeast Asia. So we get inbound leads because it's the way the internet works from like a guy today, the retail business in Perth, Australia, signed up. Awesome, close to London retail business, same thing. We're not focused on either of those markets. We don't care, but the product works and we'll obviously want their business. But it's not our core of what we're trying to do. We're trying to, we want to hammer the Southeast Asia market. We think that the opportunity is amazing here and that it's wide open, and we're trying to go as fast as we can to push into the market. And so as internationally, as outside of Southeast Asia, we don't put too much effort into it. But you know, the internet, it just happens. Like we get leads from tech in Asia that some guy in the U.S. signs up, or you know, whatever. Just stuff like that happens, and we obviously don't stop it. But yeah.
And so if that's the case, why do you think a lot of investors these days will talk about how they really want a global-facing company? Why do you think that you were able to attract a lot of attention from investors with this explicit Southeast Asia focus?
Well, the investor thing is difficult. There's investors that they want you to be a California-based corporation and can't speak to you otherwise. Or there's Canadian firms that can only invest in Canadian firms. There's a lot of restrictions being over here that investors just can't do it, or it doesn't fit, or they just don't know how it works, so they just don't. On the other side of that, there's lots of opportunity with the money that's over here that's specifically focused on Southeast Asia that doesn't necessarily worry too much about the rest of the world. So that we found there's good and bad. We've got a bunch of investors from kind of all over the place. A little bit of Silicon Valley, Canadians, a couple guys in Dubai, Philippines, here, Singapore. And for us, it was just a matter of the same thing. We sell like anybody sells. We made a list of who we thought was a fit for what we were doing, who would be interested in our story and our business, and who, like, some investors don't do B2B investments. Some investors are only consumer facing. Like there's a million things. We just have to understand who are they, what do they do, how big is their fund, do they look at companies like us? Is B2B their thing? Is Southeast Asia focus their thing? And whittle down a list that made sense of who fits. That's kind of how we dealt with it.
Uh-huh. And so is that why the investors that have invested you are from all over the place, and it's just kind of a grab bag of people and organizations from all over the world?
No, like we've only done our seed rounds, and so it's a bunch of angel investors. 500 startups is in, but it's a lot of individual angel investors that either like our story, what we're doing, or on the other side of it, just know Mike or myself from our past and are sort of betting on that. It depends. Some of them are, some of the guys we've just known for a long time. Each one of them's got their own story as to why. I think we have to be guessing maybe as to why they're in, or what was their reason for making that investment. But yeah.
Okay. Now you say over and over again that you're a Southeast Asian focused company. That means, of course, more than just the Philippines. So what does that mean when you want to expand into other countries? Or I guess first I should ask, approximately what percentage of your customers are from the Philippines?
Vast majority of the Philippines
Vast
right now.
majority.
So we're looking at Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore now.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely we'll do Malaysia, Singapore first. All we really need to do is integrate the tax code to run the payroll side. Everything else works the same. And then we'll have a language issue with some of these countries. But the language side, we've done all the work for the conversion of the product. We just haven't actually put in the different words for each language. But the structure is there. And so we'll do the tax integration that needs to be done to understand the tax code of how payroll taxes work in each country, and then roll it out. And so the way we do it is we find charter clients that we want to, like we were lucky, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf Philippines was our second customer. It's a pretty amazing second customer to have. They started with us at 50 stores, or 71 stores now. We're doing the same thing in Singapore and Malaysia of working with nice sized customers that we can do everything but payroll, time, attendance, scheduling, HRIS, analytics, get them up, get them running, get them live, get them happy. While we're doing the tax integration, we've already got them as live customers, so we can beta test our taxes so they can run their payroll through us, even though they're still using whatever it is they do in their old version. So it gives us live feedback out of a real business. Because all of these businesses have, there's always a weird thing that goes on. There's some employee, especially in retail, food and beverage businesses, there's a guy that works a 20-hour shift. And it's because the store flooded and he's not leaving until it's fixed. Or a car crashed through the doors and they got to fix all the windows. And there's always these weird outlier situations, and that's where we had to work on the system there of making the system work for that 3% of employees. And so we like to do it with live companies because that's how we can figure out those unique issues early and sort it out before they go live on our side, on our payroll side.
Okay. Now, so in other words, when you're trying to reach customers in other markets, it sounds like you're already kind of reaching them. And as for the legwork that's required to do that, you don't necessarily. Do you plan on building teams aggressively in, say, Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, or do you think that do you feel confident that you can kind of keep the core in Manila, and then maybe once in a while fly someone out to Singapore or to Canada?
Well, for us, we sell through partners. The majority of what we're doing is through partners. So we've got partners on the ground in the Philippines, and we support that partner. We've got a new partner in Singapore that will do the sales onboarding training, and we support that partner. And that so far works for us because, again, we wanted to figure out a model because we're going to have language problems, culture problems. That just we feel it's going down the route of partners makes the most sense for us at this moment. And so that's the path we're taking is running down through partners to help us grow the business.
Whereas doing it in-house, that would just be more headaches than you guys can or have.
A lot of headaches, but having locals on the ground, there's a lot I learned about the Philippines that I just didn't know. Like it's just weird, like little things. Like in Canada, if you fire an employee, he's terminated. In the Philippines, if you say you've terminated somebody, you've probably shot him. Right? Like, because in the Philippines, you're not terminated, you're separated. And I remember when I first saw separated, it's like, what do I care if the guy's married or separated? What does that matter? And it's just literally, it's a tiny little thing, but it's a cultural difference. We're all speaking English. It's just they call it separated, we call it terminated. And it makes a big difference and there's a million of these things, right? And there's all these little cultural differences that we would have to, and we have learned in the Philippines, but we would have to learn for all of these countries, and it would be painful and would slow us down. And so we think having partners on the ground that can help us navigate it faster makes the most sense for us.
I'm curious, Anthony, does that apply to you? I mean, you're a company that's also rapidly expanding, but it would seem that word expansion is something that's very different for GrabTaxi than it is for PayrollHero.
Sorry. Flip the switch. There you go. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Great. So, exactly what he said. So, these situations, I remember a story in Manila. We came in, this was about a year ago, talking to a taxi fleet owner. He came in with 3 other guys, Then we were in a Chinese restaurant with a red cloth. And then 10 minutes into the discussion, I hear a loud thud. I'm like, I look under the red cloth and it's a Uzi on the ground. I was like, holy, what did I get myself involved? And I find out he's also the largest arms dealer in Manila. But he also owns a taxi fleet. So, and these are stories that, right? I mean, you can imagine my leverage for bargaining right after that, right? It became nil very fast. And there are like 3 bodyguards, and all of them were carrying, some real arms. So I think these are situations where you have to understand. Southeast Asia, I do completely agree. Huge market. When we compared it versus the Chinese taxi apps, it's actually exactly half. So China versus Southeast Asia, at least in the taxi space, I can't speak on behalf of the other industries, but for sure, the taxi space is half of China. So it's a big market, huge opportunities, but extremely convoluted, right? Between Philippines, I mean, even within Philippines, when you go to Cebu, people speak Cebuano, not Tagalog. So people get that wrong all that. Oh, Filipino, all the same, from Luzon to Cebu, they're different. Our drivers in Thailand, they don't speak, they speak Thai, but they speak Isanese, which is much closer to Laotian. So you have to understand these nuances to really work with them as partners. And I think that's something that a lot of people, especially, it's great that he's completely locally adapted, but a lot of folks from the States come to Southeast Asia and they're like, oh, it's just one place. You're like, no, it's not. And then they're like, oh, the Thais and the Malays are it. No, it's not. So, and I think you have to respect these nuances if you want to really grow fast and integrate and don't get an Uzi,
Well, Stephen, in your case, do you think that? It seems to me that you're dealing with a different type of business. I mean, you're trying to recruit drivers. You're trying to get ordinary people using GrabTaxi. Whereas Stephen, you're working with enterprises, right? These are people that are presumably. It's just kind of a different type of customer. Do you find that that you maybe don't run into these same hurdles? Like it doesn't get that specific, whereas Anthony is dealing with something that's like even more local. Do you find that, or not so much?
Like the local, the best. I've never had a gun drop on the floor. The issues we deal with are, I think, local issues, but complicated. Like in Canada, if you have a business and you sign up with ADP, the biggest payroll company in the world, you just do your payroll the way ADP does your payroll. That's it. That's how it works. And in Southeast Asia, the government's got its rules, and business owners have their interpretation of those rules. And every business owner has a different interpretation of those rules. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going on in businesses. And so it's just a matter for us of figuring out who's doing what, right, wrong, does it matter, and sort of understanding how that side of the Southeast Asia world works as far as interpreting tax law, payroll law.
Well, talking about interpreting rules differently, I would imagine that Anthony, you're probably an expert on this, as you need to deal with all sorts of regulations regarding the transportation industry.
Yeah. So public transport hasn't seen disruption in decades. So we have a problem. So let me, if you allow, I'll just share a 30-second spiel of the taxi industry. Taxi industry in Southeast Asia has been politically run. So a lot of owners tend to be linked to the incumbent political parties. So you basically don't want to mess with them because you would disappear. And when he means terminated, he's serious. He's really serious. It actually happens. So being a local Southeast Asian, I think we respect these nuances because So I know a friend who actually, very big telco company, and he went to a country, and I won't name the countries because you know who I'm talking about. And the next thing you know, the deal fell through, and if he was to touch down in that country, he goes straight to prison because they've managed to work with the police force. So you have to, I think all of us really respect these nuances, and that's how we survived the past. So we're only 2 years old. We started June 5th, 2012. Now we are officially the largest taxi group in Southeast Asia. So we deliver a ride every 2 seconds, so across the region. So we hit 15-20 million queries a day, just because of the velocity. But naturally, when you create that type of velocity, you create disruption. And when you create disruption, you piss people off. And so Vietnam, for example, we went in, we signed up 500 drivers in 2 weeks. I won't name the name, the fleet name. He sent out 200 inspectors, deleted all our apps in 2 days. So that's the kind of cowboyness you have to be comfortable with if you want to deal with Southeast Asia. At least in the taxi space. I can't speak about the payroll space or any other space, but I know in highly regulated industries that tend to have quite a bit of opaqueness, when we come in and offer transparency, offer trackability, offer safety, offer customer service, then, and we disrupt the way of order, the way payments were done, via getting permits, and suddenly people are agnostic. Suddenly your brand name as a taxi company doesn't matter anymore. Then we have, we have security everywhere. If you come to our offices, you'll see like 6 guards with arms. People think we're running a bank. We're like, no, it's a tech company. But wow, you got a lot of enemies. So it's just, I think, and I always told our guys, whoever joined us, said, look, you have to be comfortable that you're dealing in a space where it's a cowboy town, and you got to accept that as a norm, price it in, and then be ready to deal with the other cowboys, or be a bigger cowboy.
So when you're forced to be a bigger cowboy, what does that mean? When a big taxi boss decides that he's going to shut down GrabTaxi on all of his drivers' smartphones, what do? Do you fight back? Do you hire a lawyer? Do you just kind of wait it out and hope that
So lawyers. I'll stop there. So at least for some of the countries where we had 200 inspectors hit us very fast, what we did was, first we were taken aback. So all our guys tend to be local. So we're very proud, say in Vietnam it's run by local Vietnamese, in Thailand it's run by Thais, in Philippines it's run by Filipinos. So I think having a local, one that grew up through the system, understands these nuances is very important. At least that was my key takeaway. The second was, when I deal with these guys, I think a lot of times you have to go down to the taxi fleet boss and be like, boss, please help, and you don't wanna look like I'm here to fight you, because I think that wouldn't turn out well, because I'm still a foreigner even though I'm Southeast Asian. And the second, I think, besides approaching him, you first do it, okay, now that you've responded aggressively, what can I do? What we did was we said, hey, drivers, look, these are your phones. They're not the company's phones, they're not the fleet owners, they're your phones. And this is the shape of your new rice bowl, right? Our drivers make between 30% to 300% more income every day. Take home, net. So what the drivers have been so innovative of, and please don't share this out, they actually delete the app, go in for inspection, and then reinstall the app each time. So, the power of innovation doesn't only happen in technology. When a driver makes enough money, he'll make sure he'll help you out.
Okay. So you're getting so much resistance from the taxi industry, and yet it seems like in other countries, apps that follow the basic model of GrabTaxi, which start with taxis, they don't really have too much of an issue with them. And I think that there's some fear that the brand name of a particular fleet no longer means as much as it used to. But by and large, it's easy to say that you're a big advocate for the taxi industry because you're helping them bring in more revenues. When you go into black cars, though, which you recently did with the launch of GrabCar, it becomes kind of a different story. So I'm wondering, first off, obviously there are other companies in the U.S. that are doing this. There's Uber, that's the company that's on everyone's mind right now. Was that a conscious decision to start with yellow taxi cabs, cash payments?
Sure. So my great-grandfather was a taxi driver, so I think that helped a lot. Understanding. So all of us who joins us first day or first week has to be a taxi driver. So you had to go through, in stick, go through all his pains, go through the traffic jam in EDSA, and feel the pain of 2 hours and getting nowhere, being on the same spot. I think that appreciation is very important. The second was, why did we work with taxi industries was we wanted to leverage fast. So first we said, okay, why smartphones? So smartphones was growing like this in Southeast Asia. Data cost was falling like this. Taxis was everywhere. There was an oversupply of taxis. Again, a function and legacy of, unlike in the States, a medallion cost $1 million. In Southeast Asia, it was much cheaper because it was issued out as an instrument by very powerful people to help in many aspects. And with that, there was an oversupply of taxi permits. So once we knew that there was an oversupply, what were they hungry for? They were hungry for jobs. So we consciously made that decision to work with taxi drivers, to work with taxi companies, to work with local governments. So we work very closely with LTFRB in Philippines, with LTA in Singapore, with the Thai police. So our drivers are filtered throughout. We are the only guys who are connected to the police database in Malaysia. We work at the Prime Minister's office. We work with the Economic Transformation Unit. So think about us as a technology layer on top of all the local infrastructure. So local taxis, local mobile, local handsets. And by doing that, we basically could move much faster. Right? If you had to build your own fleet, go talk to black cars, go sign up. A lot of people just weren't familiar. They're like, hey, I'm gonna jump in some random like Prius or some random like Honda Civic. It's just people like literally end up in a monsoon drain, raped and killed, right, in Southeast Asia. I mean, that's not unheard of. So we had to go through a system that people already had a natural norm. Why did we choose credit cards? Again, same thing, right? 95% of people don't have credit cards. So we said, how do you monetize from the cash economy? So people said, hey, charge the passenger. We said, no, charge the driver. Again, a localized solution because drivers were hungry for jobs. So when you're hungry for jobs, we said, hey, we are lead aggregator. We brought and channeled you 1,000 customers a day. There's so many bookings. They said that by the time I press green, the job's already gone. So we actually had to slow down the number of jobs that was coming to them because the velocity was just too high. So what we did was we created a prepaid wallet. So again, we followed what was a natural habit for drivers. They were used to going to buying prepaid credit for mobile phones, for talk time, for minutes. So we said, okay, now you go to any 7-Eleven, you buy prepaid credit now for jobs. So they're like, oh, that makes sense, right? So they went and then in their app, there's a digital wallet, a mobile wallet, that every time there's a job, it just takes off that wallet. So again, it was just working with pre-existing infrastructure, pre-existing ideas, pre-existing habits, and then mastering it and leveraging it and moving fast.
What if someone said to you, these are all pre-existing habits, but the future is going to be in credit cards on phones? Well, what would your response be?
Well, let's see that future.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a startup, I think as a humble startup, we all have only X number of resources, and you got to focus on today because you may not survive tomorrow. So I mean, right? I mean, that is a fact of life. We are in a war. We're dealing with a guy who, has 1.2 billion in cash, and they are very willing to throw it around. We're dealing with a lot of international guys. So for us, as the David versus the Goliath, you better pray to God, walk through the valley of death, have a big ass pebble, and swing damn hard. That's all you have.
So the launch of GrabCar was like an example of just swinging damn hard.
Yeah, and hope you hit the right guy. Right?
So everything on the payment of GrabCar, both for drivers and riders, is that also cash? There's a cash option, and drivers can top up via their SIM card style.
It's exactly the same model.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk about transportation network industry getting a ride on demand. Some people have been saying that it's an industry that's subject to commoditization, meaning in essence that the average rider doesn't care which app he uses. He just wants a ride. Yeah. And drivers likewise, they don't really care which app that they use. They'll have 5, 6 apps on their phones, and whichever one gets them the ride quickest, they'll take. What's your response to that type of analysis?
So when we look at our cohort analysis, we're very clear the stickiness and engagement of our drivers. So for example, drivers, I can give you numbers because they're internal, but when we compare against our other competitors, we're very clear on engagement. One of the reasons is drivers again, it goes back to the culture. In Southeast Asia, drivers come from very familial backgrounds. So if you're going to control a Filipino man, you work with his wife, because his wife really got it. So that's something. So we work with, we create programs to help their wives, and if the husband decides to be funny, the wife will make sure he pays for it. So that's one way of constant engagement. The second, on passenger side, what we did was we realized that as long as they get delivered a ride, safe, fast, and cheap, that's all that matters. You're right. The loyalty of a passenger is low. However, as long as you consistently deliver that over time, and we'll be the first to admit, it's tough. Sometimes it's hard to deliver at Friday, 6 p.m. It's pouring outside. There's 100,000 orders, but 10,000 cars, right? So it's just impossible to match. So, and then being taxis, we don't create a forced surge pricing. We create a voluntary surge pricing. Again, because we work with the local governments, we work within the local laws, we didn't want to take that position. So
I just want to cut you off. Can you explain that voluntary surge pricing? What does that mean?
So it's an e-tipping function. So if you go into the app, there's a box there that lets you price what you're willing to pay, because your willingness to pay at 5 p.m. Friday, if your wife's screaming at you, is probably very high. But if you're just going to meet some guys for a beer, you're like, hell, I'm not gonna pay $20 for a cab. So I think that willingness to pay is very important, because I don't want to be forced down my throat. I want to say, hey, I'm willing to pay this much, then I get it right. So that, right? Sorry.
It's like a bribe.
Well,
pick me up instead of him.
Yeah. I mean, it's a natural optimization of resources, right? So that's what we do. So how I look at it, going back to your question, is for drivers, the engagement is very high, depending on what levers you use. On passengers, you have to consistently deliver that service at the lowest cost possible.
Okay. Now, no one knows the numbers for Uber. No one really knows the numbers for GrabTaxi. But let's just say that we had a tally board here that put GrabTaxi ahead of Uber. Why might you say that you've exceeded them?
So, in Southeast Asia, we know. So I can't comment on any other countries, but we do know some numbers, and we are about 10 to 15 times larger. And the reason is, one of them was cash. Again, 95% of people don't have credit cards in Southeast Asia. That's a key element. The second thing was, I think as they raise their price down, Uber Black has historically been very, very expensive. So as they race down with their other products, what we will see is you'll see a race to the bottom, right? Whoever who can fight price for price all the way down. And I think it will come to that place where it'll just be, it'll be like the Chinese, right? Didi and Kuaidi, they were just going at it, right? 10 Kwai subsidies here, 20 Kwai, but you know, they weren't paid for it. It was Tencent and Ali, right? So they didn't mind. So I guess, you know, if you can find me those investors, I won't mind either. But I think that aspect is something we all need to be ready for. That it's going in all many marketplace games. It's a tit for tat, and it'll just be a race to the bottom. It's, you know, literally, I see you, you're driving at me, I'm driving at you, and we see who turns first. And if not, we crash. And that's an acceptable part of the game.
Interesting. Okay. Now, a few final questions. So, let's say I am a brilliant coder. I'm a brilliant coder. I have a little wanderlust, and I want to go start a company in Southeast Asia. Let's say, what would your response to this talented coder be?
Where are you? I want to hire you. If he can, right? I mean, he knows how tough it is. I mean, to find rock star coders, maybe in Hong Kong it's different, but to get, you know, a top coder from the Valley or from Tencent or Ali, like, you know, you have to be ready to dish out some serious equity and get the best, right? I think for us, we've been very blessed to get some really, really good guys. Those who usually start as a tech coder, at least in Southeast Asia, find it quite tough. Why? Because in Southeast Asia, I think a big part has to do with business knowledge. So a lot of techies, especially in a business like ours, as important as it's online or mobile based, it's also offline, right? Building up a huge ass sales force who go down, sign up drivers, knock on windows, go gas station by gas station. Sir,
is that really how you do? You have a team of people that goes to gas stations and they knock on windows?
Yeah, I mean, you go to any big gas station, you see like a bunch of green shirt guys, they're like running around and just signing up driver by driver, right? It's a race. You see it in Kuaidi, you see it in Didi. When we talk, we actually say, hey, how big is, you know, what's your sales conversion rates, and building up that sales force is critical. It's a big part of the business. The third thing is, I think a lot of it has to do with relationships. So, you know, for us to get Globe, for example, Globe is our big partner. So all our drivers have free data. Right? So again, it was a relationship that suddenly your cost to acquire a driver just drops. And I think that naturally gives you a competitive advantage. So having these relationships, if you're just a tech coder, without those relationships, without the sales force, without the understanding of business, it's going to be tough.
Any thoughts, Stephen, you want to add?
Well, if there's a smart coder out there, the same thing, we would take him or her. The only thing I could add, like, we've had trouble in the engineering side. We use Canada as our back office for our Philippine side. So we've got almost all of our engineers work out of Whistler, Canada, and we use that as a way to attract talent. We struggle to find engineers here or Southeast Asia. We struggled for a long time, and we opened up in Whistler. We used the mountain as our advantage, and we had to actually pay a little bit less, give them flexible schedules, give them a ski pass, and we get amazing guys. We have 10 engineers in Whistler, and 8 of them are not Canadians. Australians, 2 Filipinos, Americans, one of them from France. So it's a tough market out there. We're doing crazy things trying to attract talent. So, I don't know, your question is about if there's a smart coder out there, what would you tell them about Southeast Asia? But I think there's a lot of money for smart coders out there that might be better than starting your own business, you could probably go get some good money from a lot of companies that would need smart coders.
Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up here? I'll open the floor up to questions if anyone has they want to ask.
Yeah, shoot. Thank you both for being here. I can speak up, don't worry. I think you can hear me. So both you guys are doing sales in some way. We talked a little bit about cultural barriers, about the need for inside sales. You're both doing it in a different way. Could you talk a little bit about how you form your partnerships, what the nature of that is, what type of contract you're working with? And could you tell me more about how you build up your sales force?
Go ahead.
For us, each one of our partners is different. We treat each one of them different because we don't have too many. But they're all unique. We don't paint them all with the same brush and try and force them into the same deal. Each one has special capabilities, unique client bases that they've already got that brings a different aspect to what we're trying to do. So it's a hard question because there's no right answer. Every partner is a little bit different in each way.
Can I ask then how you approach them? What's the general offer you put on the table? Is it a motion to sale?
Yeah, there you go.
You're getting the microphone.
All right.
Got rid of it.
So the question I'm asking is primarily about sales in Southeast Asia, and the follow-up I had was, could you tell me then maybe one sample case study of what you approach a partner with to get them to come on board in helping you sell your service?
Yeah, well, we just talked about it today. There's kind of three pieces that go into our contracts: either the setup fee or the implementation fee, the sales commission, and kind of the ongoing reoccurring fee of just sort of maintaining that customer, which can involve customer service. Some partners are part of all three of those. Some partners are just lead generation machines. They send us a lead, we close it down, they get a one-time fee. Like I say, each one's unique, but there's sort of three pieces to it for us that we look at, and depending on who they are and the size of them will depend on the percentage of the sale that they get and how long that they get that for. There's no.
No, that
Okay.
So, with regards to Salesforce Army, think about literally an army, like 500 people. So, you want to build up fast. So, students are a great, affordable resource. And they price their time very differently from how you would price your time. So you want to align to what you're trying to generate. So for us, is we generate transactions, so we align it that way. The third is then, for us, a big part of sales was sign up drivers. So you have to be literally super thick skin, right? You go up to an uncle, he's like, I never seen that smartphone. And you're like, I don't care. Then you stay there, and then you talk to him, and then as the other guy comes, and then he's like, oh, here's a smartphone, uncle. Then the other guy comes, then we threesome the guy, and then the third guy like signs him up on a piece of paper, and then by the time he knows it, he's like, oh, I just bought a smartphone, and I have the app installed, and I'm all signed up. So I think you just got to be really, in Chinese, with a thick face, which is, you slap and you'll be fine. I think that approach is something that will be really embodied. The second is, I think finding talent in general is very tough. So for us, when I came back from B school, a classmate from Harvard Kennedy School joined me. Some friends from Columbia joined me. So there was sort of an amalgamation of talent. So my co-founder was a McKinsey girl, so she brought some McKinsey guys. We had some Bain guys. So it's a constant war for talent, like a war for taxi drivers, and you gotta really go out and meet people, and then people who share that same social mission, who share the same hunger and are willing to push 15 hours a day. Those are the guys you want, whether it's sales all the way to the top.
Just pass the mic.
I have a question for Anthony. You've done a good job. So I think a typical charge for a consumer company like GrabTaxi is the kind of chicken and egg problem whereby if you don't have the merchant, you won't get the consumer and vice versa. How do you get through that 10, getting that first 10 customer or merchant sign up to?
No, very fair question. Very fair question. So first of all, we've done is shown traction. We haven't done anything more than that, but shown traction. I think for us, once again, we're just when we first I'll take one step back. When we first started, we built it. It was outsourced. It's one of the dumbest ideas. Don't outsource. And it took forever, and it was a shitty product. So we took what we had, which was a shitty product, and then tried to market it fleet by fleet. And we went company by company, and we naturally started the biggest first, but you're obviously like, what can you offer me? So that was painful. So that slowed us down, 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th or 5th company, the guy actually said, hey, Anthony, wait, your last name, and he said, hey, are you this guy's grandson? I was like, oh shit, what did my granddad do to him? So he said, wait, hold up, and then he was like 76 years old, and he walked up slowly with his walking stick, came down with a little car model, and he said, look, your granddad helped me when nobody wanted to help me with the first 40 cars. So here it is. Here's my 40 cars to let you beta test. So that's how we started, and then that 40 cars basically grew to whatever 30, 40,000 cars. So the point is that it took a long time. It took a long time, but you need to get that first break. And all I can say is ours was a miracle, and do good because your grandchildren will enjoy it.
At some stage, you need. Is it on?
You gotta turn it on. You're in control.
Or you just press it.
It's on.
It's on. At some stage in the life of each industry, there's consolidation, and this is for Anthony. And for those of you who were born in the 80s plus, you might remember the fact that AOL bought Time Warner. Do you have any strategy for the potential consolidation of your industry, which could happen at any time? And would you be prepared to acquire Uber?
So I think for us, we're very clear about our market space. Our space is in Southeast Asia. We stay in Southeast Asia. Obviously, there's huge temptations to expand throughout, but first of all, when we expand, we say, hey, is there a real problem? So is there a safety problem? Do drivers not make enough? How's the efficiency of the existing system? So and then the second question is, are we the best to serve that market, right? Versus whatever the other competitors are. Then that's how we assess new markets. In our case, in Southeast Asia has paid off very well because being Southeast Asians, we're there to serve Southeast Asians for Southeast Asian problems. The question would be when these big guys come down. We've seen that they've had a tough time, so they're really throwing. So we've seen customer acquisition cost $100 per head, US, which is a lot of ringgits, a lot of rupiahs, a lot of baht. But they do it because they realized that the product wasn't super accustomed for that region. For us, we took the Ali way. When eBay tried to buy Ali, we're very steadfast in saying, hey, and we tell our board of investors. So we have investors, Temasek is one of them in Singapore, GGV, which is Silicon Valley guys, the guys who funded Square, Flipboard, who funded Alibaba, Baidu, Qunar. So these guys were used to Chinese companies fighting that big fight. And you need these guys that are very comfortable saying, we're all in, let's just bet this, and it's a race to the bottom, and we're gonna, and my pitch was, if you notice, my elevator pitch was terrible at best. My first pitch to every investor is, I guarantee you, you'll lose money for a long time. Oh, good. Because and that's something that is really important to understand. Right? If you want to win this game, you have to be ready to bet everything and go all the way down. And for us, we're very comfortable in Southeast Asia. We will continue to own that space, at least for the foreseeable future. What our competitors will do, we have some prediction, but again, they are not the target, right? So the target is the guys who street hail, right? You guys go downstairs, all of you will probably, if you didn't drive, you probably street hail. You wouldn't use an app. How do you move? That is our target. That's our real competitor, right? So we have a program called Chop the Hand. Not the Filipino way, so with a Uzi, but really bringing them on board and breaking that mindset. So focusing on that rather than focusing on competitors is, there's this saying that a good friend taught me, right? You're chasing a girl, focus on a girl, right? Don't think about the guys who are looking at her. So focus on the girl.
Okay.
And I also have a question for Anthony.
Where is it? Oh,
Yeah, so did you come across another taxi service that's also based in Southeast Asia named Rickshaw back in, I think it was also two years ago, but eventually they closed doors. And what do you think, like, what they did right and what they did wrong, and compared to, what do you think, like, you did right to, survive, to hold out for this long?
Sorry, what was the company's name again?
Rickshaw. They are also another taxi company that's also based in Southeast Asia. Like around 2 years ago. I don't know if you came across that, but like, how did you, if you did come,
Sorry. There was so I say this in all pure ignorance. Forgive me. There were like 15, 20 guys all across, and we don't even know. Like, people tell us, oh, there's this guy, and we're like, we never even heard of them. I think, as was mentioned, sorry, what's your name? Hugh. As what Hugh mentioned, there was a period where there was like 15 guys. There was, I think, 6 guys in Malaysia. In Singapore, there are a multitude of guys. In Thailand, there were some creators. In Vietnam, there were some guys. I think it was just a matter of speed and execution. And then I think a lot of them tried to, a big part of this business is network effects. Back to that question was, how do you get that first 40 cars, right? A lot of them took a long time to build that first 40 cars. We managed to get that edge, and then we managed to build up a sales force fast enough. And then after that, once it comes to a point where all the drivers are on your system, which is back to Josh's point, do drivers have 5-6 apps? Maybe in Hong Kong, but not for sure in Southeast Asia. You see the guy have 2, and sometimes when they have hours, you're like, oh my god, it's already too many jobs. I don't need more jobs. Right? So I think that aspect will settle in, and that's when you see consolidation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Stephen at PayrollHero. Since you have your feet kind of in North America as well as in the Philippines, do you see a potential market for companies that are moving to Southeast Asia in terms of marketing your product before they even make the move over? Do you see a market in working with companies that are moving offices or building brands in Southeast Asia in terms of...
And having them sell our product in Southeast Asia?
Or selling your product to them as they move their offices to Southeast Asia. So you have a lot of companies that are now seeing Southeast Asia as
and they're setting up here, you mean?
Setting up
and they can become a customer of ours. Yes, lots of them.
Okay. And are you marketing them on the North America side mostly, or on the Philippines?
No, we don't market outside of our region here. Like we chase 3 industries pretty specifically: restaurants, retail, and we call it the BPO industry, but BPO to us is office environments. It's little bit general. Basically, we kind of ignore construction, manufacturing, a few different things, and just we want to talk about before, like be super focused on a small niche, hammer it hard rather than trying to be everything to everybody. And so like the restaurants is a great example where new brands will show up in the country and they'll hear about us, get referred to us, and they come on board super early where they're opening their first store and they're our customer. And that definitely happens a lot, which we like. We like coming into a business when it's brand new, especially if it's going to grow, because it's super easy to onboard them. We kind of tell them how it's going to work, rather than trying to onboard them when they've been doing something for 20 years and they've got employees all over the place and they've got existing legacy systems we've got to worry about, or legacy rules that don't make any sense. So yeah, we do like that part of it.
All right, one last question.
So you both built businesses in Southeast Asia, which is good news, and a lot of US companies, European companies all come to Asia. Would you see yourselves, for both of you, taking your businesses from Asia overseas to the US, North America, South America, or Europe? Can you see yourselves sort of building both those businesses in other territories away from Asia?
For us, we like emerging markets. We're focused on Southeast Asia right now. We get a lot of inquiries randomly out of like Peru. And there's one guy pushing us hard to do tax and get the payroll side for Peru, and he says all the time, like, if Peru was physically located here, we would be doing it because it's the same. He's like, it's the same. It's an emerging market. It doesn't have very many products built for it. Just physically, it's somewhere else. And so for us, I think the answer is there's lots going on in Africa that's interesting. South America, there's a lot, but it's the same as the question about the markets we focus on. We also deal with that physically. We don't want to try and do too many things because we'll die trying to be too big. So we want to stay laser focused and hammer these markets as quickly as we can, but not try and be everything to everybody too quickly.
Yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head. It's a function of resources. So if you told me, Anthony, if you raise $1 billion, yeah, maybe then I'll expand, right? It's really a function of resources. So if you raise 100 million or 50 or whatever X dollars, I think the bullets can only spread so far, right? So you have to be cognizant of that, right? It is a war every day, literally. You wake up, it's a war. You sleep. I was told that I still talk in my sleep about work, so it's still a war even when I sleep. You wake up, literally, it's constantly a war. So going that route and then taking where are you strong? So, for example, if you look at the Vietnamese war against Americans, how do you take on somebody that size, right? You find little holes that Americans can't jump in, right? And you sneak in as a small little Vietnamese guy, right? So I think just being very pragmatic about it, you've got to know where you have competitive advantage.
Alrighty, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Anthony. This is very, very productive. Alright, so we've got some pizza in the back. Everyone feel free to move around, exchange some business cards, say hi, make some new friends.